Good morning. It is a Sunday today, about 9:30 or so, and I am over at the Hobby House getting ready to do some work, which can only mean one thing. That is that my wife has taken the kids out of town for the weekend. I try my best to not work too much, which means Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 is my set schedule. Being self-employed, it is pretty tough to keep to that, and whenever I have a little bit of free time, I tend to want to work, because that's the kind of stuff that I like to do. So let's look at our progress on the Hobby House today. In our last video, you may recall that I stated I'd be coming in on a Saturday and doing a little bit of extra work. And that was the case. We had plenty of progress yesterday and have managed to build both of the walls, the accessory walls I like to call them, temporary walls, so that we could remove the center wall that used to be in the addition of the Hobby House. You can see on the floor where the old wall used to sit. That pocket that's in the floor lets us know that at some point in time that they resurfaced the floor, but the walls were built first. Same thing over here. Walls were built, well, some of the wall that sat over here was built first, and then they later decided to recover the floors. Now, there's so many different layers and things going on. I'm not actually sure what this addition used to be. I have a feeling that it may have been something like a screened-in porch at one time, but there's just so many things going on. Every time that I think that I know what this room has morphed through, then I find something else that says, nope, that's not how they did it. It's just been kind of a fun investigative report as things go on. But you can see our temporary walls. Now, we could actually make this into two bedrooms, a bedroom over here and a bedroom over here, with nice deep walk-in closets. A lot of times they'll back two bedrooms up, and then the center section ends up being built into two closets. But we're not gonna do that. We just wanna make this one really big room. And you can see the header that we fabricated. Now, we could have bought one ready-made, but this was far cheaper. I'm talking about $300 to $400 for something that was pre-made that we would have to put together, or we can just put one together ourselves. Now, I used two 2x10s and a sheet of OSB. Typically, we would want to use 1/2 inch OSB, but I grabbed, I think, 5/8 inch by accident. And so the width of this is just a little wider than the 4x4 posts that we'll want to hang it up with. Originally, I thought that a 6x6 would be needed. Turns out it is not, so we're going to use 4x4 posts. And what we were worried about was that the gap for the drywall was going to be too narrow. But it turns out that they laid the drywall on the floor first and then laid all of the walls and the ceiling, which is, it's kind of weird. Putting up walls before you put up the ceiling, just kind of weird. But at any rate, that mistake, or lack of consistent work that they did, actually gave us enough room so that our slightly too wide header will fit in between there without any drywall work. Now, trying to rip out the old boards, I wouldn't even call them headers, we had a little bit of damage up here, so we'll see if we actually need to do some major replacement. There is evidently a leak in the roof, as evidenced by this line of water damage. Last rains that we had, I've kept an eye on the house and found a little leak there. May actually be a big leak, depending on how much insulation is protecting that area up there. And then I also found that water was coming in down here, which gives us a pretty big clue as to why that the house is separating on this side. Water's probably getting onto the cinder block foundation and causing a washout, slow reduction in height over on this side. But then we've also got water running straight down, which has been just slowly eating away at the drywall and the patchwork. So we're gonna have to get up on the roof. There's a few sections where the roof transitions from one slope to another, and they did not do it properly, we're finding out, and that's where pretty much all the water seems to be coming in. So what we will be doing is getting a couple of extra hands in today and raising up the header. Let's see if I can get in from the bathroom and view down. So this is the edge of the foundation on the house. This board, cat board, I don't know what they call it, is what we're going to set the post on. We're going to sister a 4x4 post and then set the 2x10 right in there. And it actually lines up nice. So minimal amount of work. Instead of pouring footers and suspending this off of concrete footers that would be, basically dug down there, we're just going to lay one side right there on 4x4 post, and then we're going to sister in the 4x4 post to these boards on this side. And that should actually hold it up just fine. The foundation over here is not in too bad of repair, and it will just be far, far easier to do it that way. If it does happen to settle, we can address it at that time. So it's gonna save a lot of money and a lot of time doing it this way. We're gonna try it out first. And the quality of this home is not so much that I'm gonna actually worry if there's a little bit of settling. It's close enough to where I'm almost tempted to just push part of it over or push the entire house over and restart. But that's kind of a long-term goal, maybe 10 years down the road or something like that. First, we're going to try to get some value out of it as it is and just kind of polish it up some. So what would be next? That's a great question. Finish work, really. After we get this hung up in the top, we're going to have to address the floor, and I'm not exactly sure what we're going to end up doing on that. Since we've changed plans on the ceiling, that makes the floor a little bit different. We may end up just jacking it up from the basement, so to speak. And we've got this little access hole here. We'll just cut a wider access panel so that we can work underneath. Probably end up digging a footer out and then suspending the center of the floor, jacking the center of the floor up from a concrete footer that is placed down there. That seems like it may be the easiest way to get in there so that we don't have to snake in another beam. Now, speaking of snaking in the beam, you may be wondering, how on earth did we get a beam that is longer than the room into this? And it took a little bit of thought work. So we pulled the beam in through over here, just went straight into the room with the beam, all the way to the back corner. And there was just enough room to set the corner of the beam right there, and then pick it up from that end and snake it this way. It just barely cleared. But we had to take out all of these boards to pass it through. This stud, and that stud. And so you can see we actually have a sistered board up on top, 2x4 turned sideways. So we screwed that sister board in to the top board. I don't know what that's called. It would be the header for just a wall, I guess. You'll have to excuse my lack of proper terms. I am not a construction sort of guy typically. But at any rate, we managed to affix this board all the way down right there. We took out these 3 boards. The ceiling did sag just a little bit as the last board was taken out, but it held. And then we were able to snake the header in, pull it this way far enough. Actually, no, that was wrong. What we did is we pulled the back end of the board in here. That's right, we actually had to try twice to get everything in. So first we had gone over here, and then we couldn't quite, there wasn't enough room to snake it that way and then pull it back. And so we had snaked the board into this corner, and then there was just barely enough room. You can see it would come in from the doorway over here. There was just barely enough room to pick this board up and clear these 3 boards that were pulled out and then lay it down right there. It was a very tight fit. And like I said, it actually did take a couple of tries, which is why I was slightly confused at first on which way we had gotten it in. But that will be the next step this afternoon that we do, is lift it up. I'm gonna put a little 2x4 or 4x4 piece right there, just so we can kind of slide it in and have it held in a pocket on that side. And then on this side, we'll basically put it up as high as we can, screw it in to the board that it's sitting next to, which, by the way, these are all boards typically used. The 2x4s, they're the ones that are typically used in a trailer, which kind of interesting construction on there. And you can also see the original siding of the home. It's kind of a log cabin look. Well, this siding is actually structural, come to find out. When we take it off, everything is pretty flexible, let's just call it. So I pulled off the minimum amount that I could, and then we're just gonna go from there. I'll probably pull off those 3 boards that are remaining on this side just so we can clean it up, but the rest of it is gonna end up staying most likely. So once we get done with all of that, then we will assess the floor situation and go from there. But it'll make this a really nice open room. I'm looking forward to it. It's probably going to be our main studio area in here. But we'll just kind of see, play it by ear, one day at a time. Just take life one day at a time. Seems to be the best way to do it. If I think too far ahead, I tend to think too much. Let's fast forward a few days, and we have a header not installed fully, but in place. So you can see the little 2x4. Just screwed that into the wall up there to hold it, and then put a couple of other screws to pull it into the wall. And then on this side, we just have ourselves a little parallel board that sandwiches it in between. Had my boys pick up the rafter as much as they could, and I threw a screw in right there and then a couple of them up there just to hold it in the meantime. We can actually step back on this side and see how much the roof has been sagging. It was a little bit hard to, to see the angle of it, but now that we have a nice straight board next to it, you can see that she is sagging. We've probably got about a 6-inch gap, maybe a 4-inch gap on that side that we will have to get a little bottle jack and a 2x4 just to raise it up all the way before we pin it fully. So that is pretty much that. Next step, jack it up all the way, attach it in, get the 4x4s underneath it to hold it fully, and we will be ready to start taking out these false walls or accessory walls, temporary walls, whatever you want to call them, and start on a little bit of drywall work. Now, with some of the scrap, I am going to build the bathroom basically straight out this way and then back over to where that wall is, just because the bathroom is so tight. Any room at all will be greatly appreciated. Now, it's right now you can see that there's hardly any space in between the toilet and this wall, and from experience, let's give you an idea of what it looks like to use the restroom in here. That's not I don't even have very long legs. I'm like 5'10", 5'9" now that I'm getting older and shrinking a little bit. My knees are almost touching that wall. We get a little bit of wall covering on that, and I mean, it was literally maybe 2 inches. So that'll make it a lot more comfortable in there. So that's all for this episode of the Hobby House. I hope you enjoyed it, and very soon we're going to see a very wide open room in here. I'm pretty excited. So if you would like to see the future episodes of our hobby home as we fix it up, be sure to subscribe. And if you want to see anything specific on this home or for Holmes Hobbies in general, feel free to comment down below and let us know. Thanks for tuning in today, and have a good day.